It was early December, and I was spending my day off at home, staying inside by the fireplace because it was far too cold and snowy outside for my liking. I spent part of the day getting chores done around the house, but overall it was relaxing, with the news playing quietly in the background as they warned about high winds and possible blizzards expected to start that night around 5. By then, I could already see the weather getting worse, and around 7, after switching to another channel, I could hear the wind violently slamming against the house, making it sound like a full-blown blizzard outside. Curious, I walked over to the window facing my backyard. At first, all I could see was snow rushing down with almost no visibility, but then I noticed something else, a figure walking through my backyard. My yard was large and unfenced, so seeing someone there wouldn't have been shocking if not for the severe blizzard. Whoever it was moved at a steady, calm pace toward the far end of the yard before the snow and darkness swallowed them from view. I stayed at the window, hoping to catch another glimpse or understand what they were doing, but nothing appeared. I felt uneasy, worried for them, yet unable to understand why anyone would be out there, especially since the road at the end of my yard led nowhere for miles. I returned to the TV, but the image stayed in my mind, and only 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I cracked it open to see a man in a heavy winter jacket, his nose bright red and his face pale white, like he'd been exposed to the cold for far too long. I couldn't be sure if he was the same person I'd seen earlier, but I assumed he was. When I asked how I could help, he smiled weakly through chattering teeth and said he was waiting for a ride and asked if he could stay inside for a few minutes to warm up. I hesitated, genuinely conflicted, because while people say you should never let a stranger into your home, that advice feels different when someone appears to be freezing on your doorstep. I told him he could wait on the porch, which had an overhang to block the snow, and offered him an old jacket. He didn't look happy but nodded and sat down. I locked the door and went upstairs to grab the jacket, old, oversized, and in terrible condition, but warm. As I came back down and reached for the lock, something made me pause. I don't know why, but I hesitated and leaned in to look through the peephole. The man was no longer sitting, he was standing directly against the door, his hand on the handle, like he was waiting for me to unlock it. My heart started racing as I backed away and quietly called 911, staring at the door the entire time, knowing exactly what was waiting on the other side. When the police said they were on their way, I slowly checked again and the man was gone. Not on the porch, not in the yard, completely vanished. Nothing was found that night, and no trace of him ever appeared again. I'll never know what would have happened if I had opened that door, but I hope I never see him again. Last year, I was visiting my family for the holidays, and since they live 15 hours away, I planned to do the drive in one long stretch, as I usually do. This time, though, snow had come early, slowing everything down. So I prepared myself to stop at a hotel if needed. I didn't book anything in advance, figuring I'd pull off wherever felt right. When I left, it was barely snowing, but the farther I drove, the heavier it became. Roads stayed clear for a while, but everyone drove cautiously, and 8 hours in, I hadn't even made it halfway. By 9 p.m., frustration set in. I felt stuck, knowing stopping would only make tomorrow worse, so I pushed on. By midnight, exhausted and defeated, I took the next exit and pulled into a small roadside motel. It was a long, one-story building with maybe 10 rooms, old and run down, with dim, half-burnt lights on the sign. Inside, the lobby was tiny, and a sign on the desk read, "Be back in 15," with a little coffee cup beneath it. Annoyed by my luck, I returned to my car, but that's when I noticed something strange. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars. No signs anyone had been there recently. I sat in my car with the heat on, wondering if the sign was even real, since there were no nearby places for anyone to drive to. Exhaustion won, and I eventually passed out in the driver's seat. When I woke up hours later, snow was pouring down again, and strong winds rocked my car. As I looked toward the motel entrance, I suddenly locked eyes with a man staring through my window. I jumped as he stepped back and shouted something into the lot. Behind him, a truck appeared, and another man got out, both of them quickly surrounding my car and yanking at the door handles. I snapped into survival mode, throwing the car into reverse, but the wheels spun uselessly in the snow. The men started yelling, one shouting for the other to break the back window. When the glass shattered, panic surged through me, but I rocked the car back and forth until it finally gained traction. As one man leaned halfway through the broken window, I spun the car, sending him tumbling out, and sped away as the other jumped into the truck to follow, though they stopped once I reached the main road. Looking back, I know I shouldn't have fallen asleep there, especially in such an isolated place. Whatever they planned, they were prepared, and it felt like they knew that motel was the perfect place to target travelers. What they intended, I'll probably never know. For the past few years, I've worked Uber Eats during winter break, since college lets out for a month and it's an easy way to earn money without interviews or long commitments. A few weeks before Christmas, during a heavy snowstorm, I borrowed my dad's pickup truck and went out delivering. The weather kept most drivers home, so I was getting constant orders, big ones, too. After about 3 hours, I accepted one last delivery from a drive-through restaurant about 20 minutes away with a really good payout. The neighborhood looked nice on the map, large homes, lots of land, but it was late, around 11, and the snow was piling up. I decided this would be my final delivery. When I arrived, I noticed the houses were huge, older-looking mansions spaced far apart, and when I reached the address, the driveway was buried under at least a foot of snow. I parked on the road and walked up, noticing there were no lights on inside. A paper was taped to the door, and at the top, in bold red letters, it read "Notice. Issued by the county," but before I could read further, I heard footsteps crunching behind me. I turned to see a man walking toward me from the garage, wearing a dirty jacket and a short buzz cut. I told him I was dropping off his order, but he didn't respond, just kept approaching. Something felt wrong. His eyes were cold and tired as he reached for the bag, and even after I handed it to him, he didn't move. He blocked the path, didn't go inside, didn't say anything. Uneasy, I told him to have a good night and tried to step past him when suddenly he swung his arm toward me. I stumbled back as he stepped closer, telling me to come with me. Reaching out, I ran through the deep snow as he chased me, yelling for me to stop. Once I reached the road, adrenaline kicked in, and I made it to my car, backing out just as he reached the driveway. As I drove away, I saw him standing there, watching me leave. I called the police, but they later told me the house wasn't owned by anyone at the time. Whatever the notice was for, and whatever that man intended, I'll never know, but ever since, pulling up to dark houses has never felt the same.